Welcome back to another Swordmaster Publications presentation. My name is Arnie Lawrence Jr., and today we're going to be covering Joshua 19. I know that these chapters here are a lot like Leviticus in a way. They seem to be just data. They come across for a lot of people as very, very boring. They're not very interesting in their immediate information. But I want to iterate something that I brought out when I was talking through Leviticus that really brought Leviticus alive for me. We need to look at these passages that come across as kind of boring for us in the perspective of the people who they were intended for originally. When you look at this the way that the Israelite people are hearing about this, they see Joshua and the people who are leading the 12 tribes, their leaders. You have the priest Eleazar is there, and they're all at the door of the tabernacle. And they are dividing up the promised land after having conquered all of the armies that were there to defend against the Israelite nation coming in. They're there getting their promise from God. That land is being divided up. They're getting their home given to them. And there is a level of excitement that has to be there as all of this surveying has been done and this is all getting apportioned out to their families. Think of the joy that you feel when ever you have purchased a new home or new land or something, and the potential that you have, the security that you feel, all of the emotions that come along with having home. And that's what these people who have come out of slavery in Egypt, who've been wandering in the wilderness, and now for the last 5 years have been fighting in this war to gain the land that God has given them. What is their viewpoint of this? And when they hear what their apportionment is and where they're going to get to live, what are they feeling? What are they sensing here? Furthermore, understand the importance of this document. When we see how the land gets apportioned out to the various tribes, remember, this is going to be something that defines their nationality, their very existence for the next 1400 years until the coming of Messiah and until the temple is destroyed. The land promise is wrapped up in the identity of who these people are. And so see it from that perspective, understand how important these things are, and I bet you that chapter 19 is not quite as boring as what it initially may come across as. So let's get into it. I've got a couple of maps to look at here. We're going to look at remember, we've already dealt with several of the tribes, 6 of the tribes, in fact, we've dealt with, including Benjamin in chapter 18. And now we're going to deal with the last 6 tribes here, starting with Simeon. And it's just going to go through and it's going to name some major cities, and then there's going to be some villages that are kind of feeder villages to these cities. Remember, these are kind of, they had started out as city-states, that individual cities like Sodom and Gomorrah back in the day, back in Abraham's time, they were individual nations, and now they've kind of incorporated and have become fuller nations, and that's why you have 7 nations that are driven out. But they're kind of loosely federated. In that sense, you have 6 nations that were driven out. But you also have all of these individual cities that are major cities, and then it talks about the feeder villages to that. So starting in verse 1 of chapter 19, it says, "And the second lot came forth to Simeon, even for the tribe of the children of Simeon, according to their families." So this is the apportionment that's given. Remember, the word lot here is not like rolling dice or something random like that. We're not just having this kind of gambling session going on here and, oh, I hope I get it. That's not how it's working. it's like the word allotting. When we talk about the word allotting, is giving someone a resource, apportioning it to their need or their capacity. Like if I'm a boss of a company, I'm going to allot assignments to my workers based on their abilities, based on what I hired them for, and there's going to be an allotment of the resources that my company has to them. I'm not sitting there at my desk rolling dice saying, "All right, well, Bob, he's not very good at this, but the dice said that he gets this." That's not what this is talking about at all. So the lot that was given to Simeon, that was separated out, is done so according to their families, the families that are there. Remember, we're talking 2 million people about this time, and the 2 million people are divided into this whole land here, and their individual families are going to have a plot of land, a fairly sizable plot of land, that would stay in their family for the next 1400 years. That's how important what's going on here really is. It says, "And their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah." Now, what that means, and this is what I brought up in the maps here, that Simeon, the land of Simeon, you can see here's all of Judah, but within Judah you have Simeon. And this is an interesting thing here, because the apportioned land for Simeon is within the borders of Judah. But what happens to Simeon when the tribes split into the two kingdoms? What do we see happen to Simeon? Because if these guys are part of the northern tribes going on up here, because here's the two tribes physically that are part of the southern kingdom of Judah. Here's Jerusalem, here's Benjamin, here's Judah. Okay, this all is the southern kingdom. And then when we look, this all is the northern kingdom of Israel. And when we see that division come about, how does Simeon, who is within the borders of Judah, how does that play out for them? And we will talk about that when we get into the books that chronicle the history of the split kingdoms. That's going to be the books of Kings and Chronicles, which is a little bit down the road for us. All right, so Simeon was within the inheritance of the children of Judah, and they had their inheritance: Beersheba and Sheba and Moladah and Hazar Shual and Bala and Azem. And I apologize because I'm butchering these names, but we all do, so no big deal. El Talad and Bethul and Hormah and Ziklag and Beth Markaboth and Hazar Susa and Beth Lebaoth and Sharuhen, 13 cities and their villages. Ain, Remon, and Ether, and Ashan, 4 cities and their villages, and all the villages that were round about these cities, to Baalath Beer, Ramath of the south. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Simeon according to their families. And so I did find a map that has a lot of those names in it. You can see kind of where these are: Ziklag, Bethul, Hormah, all of these that were named. But all of this that is within the tribe of Judah, and right next to what they call the Gaza Strip, where the Philistines still were. Remember, they left the Philistine people there, and of course that comes back to bite them later on. But these are some of those terms, some of those cities within Simeon, which is within Judah. All right. So then we move on from Simeon to Zebulon in verse 10. It says, "And the third lot came up for the children of Zebulun according to their families, and the border of their inheritance was unto Sarid. And their border went up toward the sea," and that's, of course, we're talking about the Sea of Galilee, not necessarily talking about the Great Sea, or what we would call the Mediterranean Sea. And Marilah, and reached to Dabasheth, and reached to the river that is before Jokneam, and turned from Sarid eastward toward the sunrising unto the border of Kisloth Tabor, and then goeth out to Daberath, and goeth up to Japhia, and from thence passes along on the east to Heifer. To I'm sorry. I mean, come on, that's a funny name. You have to laugh. Get a heifer. I mean, it's like Caleb's dad, the son of Jephunneh. It's just sometimes you read these names, and it's just fun to read them. Get a heifer. I mean, I'm gonna be laughing about that all day today now. To Itakazin, and goeth out to Remon Methoar to Nia, and the border compasses it on the north side to Hanathon, and the outgoings thereof are in the valley of Jiphthahel, and Kata and Nahalal, and Shimron, and Adalah, and Bethlehem, 12 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the children of Zebulun according to their families. These cities with their villages. So here we have Bethlehem, and you can see here with here's Judah, here's Benjamin, and you can see Zebulun. Megiddo is very, very important. Shechem, of course, is we have all of these important cities here. But Zebulun's not very big, and it's not a very big tribe. But you can see here the Sea of Galilee that it's talked about there, and the idea of Bethlehem and how that's kind of far away from Jerusalem. But Zebulun is definitely in that northern kingdom as it relates to the split tribes or the split kingdoms after Solomon. So anyway, get a heifer. I'm gonna. Oh my. All right. So verse 17 says, "And the fourth lot came out to Issachar for the children of Issachar according to their families, and their border was toward Jezreel and Kesaloth and Shunem and Haphraim and Shihon and Anaharath and Rabbith and Kishion and Abez and Remeth and Ganim and in Hadah and Beth Pazez, and the coast reacheth to Tabor and Shahazibah and Beth Shemesh, and the outgoings of their border were at Jordan, 16 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Issachar according to their families, the cities of their villages." So some of the big markers for us is going to be Jordan. You're going to see a couple of names in here that might make sense to you. Tabor, of course, is important historically. You can go back and you can read in the book of Genesis about Tabor. But looking at the map, here's Issachar, and here's the Jordan River that forms that border. Here's Jezreel, which is a fairly prominent town in the histories. We're going to read about it quite a bit moving forward. But this is the land of Issachar, and you can see there's this huge separation from the southern kingdoms and how influential Ephraim and Manasseh are to that. Dan is the only one that has a direct connection to the southern kingdom that isn't the tribes of Joseph here that kind of split things, because it is the tribe of Joseph that ultimately takes the lead for the northern kingdom here, and you have all of this north of that. The only other ones you would talk about even at all would be Gad and Reuben, which are on the other side of the Jordan River at all. So there's Issachar. And then verse 24, "And the fifth lot came out for the tribes of the children of Asher according to their families. Their border was Helkath and Hali and Beton and Akshaph and Alamelech and Amad and Mishael, Bishiel, and reacheth to Carmel westward, and to Shihor Libnath, and turned toward the sun rising to Beth Dagon, and reacheth to Zebulun, the valley of Jiphthahel, toward the north side of Bethamek and Nael, and goeth out to Gabul to the left hand." So Zebulun is going to be one of the recognizable borders of Asher, and we're going to see again that the Asher is definitely north of those tribes of Joseph. Some other names, Hebron is one that we see a lot of in the in the books of history, and Rahab and Hammon and Cana, even into Great Zidon, which is another one that we'll see a lot of. And then the coast turns to Ramah and to the strong city Tyre. Tyre is a major player in I guess, the history and the psyche of the Jewish people. Tyre is mentioned in books of prophecy a lot of times as one of the nations or the city states that Judah and Jerusalem really want to be like, especially in terms of their economic power. And God says through Isaiah, you want to be like Tyre, but Tyre is going to be destroyed. So you're saying you want to be destroyed ultimately. That's what's going to happen to you if you end up being like Tyre. And the coast turns to Hosah, and the outgoings thereof are at the sea from the coast to Akzib, Uma also, and Aphek and Rehob, 22 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their families, these cities with their villages. So here the sea is talking about the Mediterranean Sea, and you can see they have this long strip. And Tyre is this kind of, and you have Tyre and Sidon are both major players in the books not only of history but also of prophecy. Um, but Tyre was this kind of an island city. There was two parts to it. There was a huge part of Tyre that was on an island off the coast, and then the other part of the city was on the coast. And they kind of had this almost a ferry system or whatever between them, but it was one city that was in two parts, and then there was one part of it that eventually gets destroyed and never gets rebuilt according to prophecy. And so Tyre is a kind of a watchword or one of those put a pin in it kind of things that you want to do thinking about it. But it also defined the border of Asher, which was said to be next to Zebulun. Now, note that Naphtali isn't one of the borders that's assigned to Asher because Asher went first. Naphtali hasn't been apportioned yet or hasn't been allotted yet, and so we don't hear about Naphtali, even though Naphtali forms a major border for the tribe of Asher. All right, so next, Naphtali. The sixth lot came out of the children of Naphtali, even for the children of Naphtali according to their families. And their coast was from Heleph, from Alon to Zananim, which again is going to, when you see that Neem at the end there, is reference to the lands of giants. And Adamai and Nekeb and Jabneel unto Lakum, and the outgoings thereof were at Jordan. So again, we talk about the Jordan. Here's the Jordan River, kind of heading through the Sea of Galilee and all of that. And so that's their river. And note that it says here, where is it? And the outgoings thereof were at Jordan. So the outgoings here, it actually kind of passes over the Jordan a little bit. You have this outgoing or this overflowing of the Jordan, and so they incorporated the North Jordan River into their territory on both sides. And then the coast turned westward to Aznoth Tabor and goeth out from there to Hukkok and reacheth to Zebulun on the south side. So again, Naphtali is going to touch Zebulun. And reaches to Asher on the west side. So now, because Asher has already been allotted, Naphtali can use Asher as a border on the west side, and to Judah upon Jordan toward the sun rising. And so you have Naphtali toward Judah, but obviously they don't touch Judah because Judah's way down here, but it says toward Judah. And Judah upon Jordan toward the sun rising. And the fenced cities are Ziddim, Zur, and Hamath, Rakath, and Kinnereth, and Adama, and Ramah, Hazor, Kadesh, and Edrei, and En Hazor, and Iron, and Migdalel, Horam, Beth Anath, and Beth Shemesh, 19 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Naphtali, according to their families, the cities and their villages. So there's Naphtali, one of the northernmost tribes. It's next to the half part of Manasseh. That's on the other side of the Jordan, and it's kind of squished in between that and Asher, with Issachar and Zebulun on their southern border. All right, so that brings us to Dan and the last allotment of the tribes. So it says the seventh lot. Now remember, the seven are the tribes that were after Judah, that did not include Reuben, did not include Gad, and it did not include Manasseh and Ephraim and whatever, but it did include Benjamin in the previous chapter, and then all of these six. So Benjamin and these six are the seven that it's talking about. It's not that there's only seven tribes, but it's these seven tribes that were yet to be apportioned after Judah and all of these others had already claimed their land, had already been given their land. Then Joshua sends out these surveyors, and they come back and they allot the land to these last seven tribes. That's what's going on here. That's why it says seven. All right. So the seventh lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families. And the coast of their inheritance, or the border, that word coast there can also just mean border. The border of their inheritance was Zorah, and Eshtaol, and Shemesh, and Shalabin, and Ajalon, and Jethlah, and Elon, and Thimnathah, and Ekron, and Eltekeh, and Gibbethon, and Baalath, and Jehud, and Ben-Berak, and Gathrimmon, and Mejarkon, and Raycon, with a border before Japho. And the coast of the children of Dan, or the border of the children of Dan, went out too little for them. Therefore the children of Dan went up to fight against Leshem, and took it, and smote it with the edge of the sword, and possessed it, and dwelt therein, and called Leshem Dan, after the name of Dan their father. So you have Dan the land, and then you have Dan the city. Kind of like there's the state of Texas, and there's also Texas City, which you have in a lot of places, where you have kind of the broad nation or the broad state, and then you have the capital of it, or you have a major city within it that takes the same name. Okay, so this is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families, these cities with their villages. And so you can see here Dan, and it includes the very famous city of Joppa, and it goes out, and it is to the west of Ephraim, and touches both Benjamin and Judah. But Dan also has to deal with the Philistines on their southern border. So that's going to be a major part to play, because the Philistines are a major thorn in the side of the Israelite people through history, and we're going to see how these tribes here interact with the Philistines when we get into the books of history. Okay, when they had made an end of dividing the land for inheritance by their coast, the children of Israel gave an inheritance to Joshua the son of Nun among them. Okay, so now you have all of these people have all of their land. All of these different families have all of their land. The very last one is Joshua. Now, imagine that you're the person that has been given the greatest amount of responsibility. You've taken over for Moses, and you have led the armies to conquering these wicked nations. You've taken out these evil armies. You've pushed all of the people out that you're supposed to. They left a few people, but you've been the leader of all of this entire time, and you've made sure that everybody else gets their promised land first. What is it? What kind of testament is it to you that you wait to the very last for your allotment of land for your family? I think that is a great testament to what kind of person Joshua actually is, that he made sure everybody else got theirs first, and then the children of Israel gave him an inheritance among them. And it says, according to the word of Jehovah, they gave him the city which he asked. So everybody else is taken care of. And Joshua says, may I have this city? Jehovah says, absolutely. They asked him, they asked God, what should we do with Joshua? What city should we give his family? And God basically says, give him the city that he asked for. Even Timnath Serah in the Mount in Mount Ephraim. So Remember, Joshua is not of the tribe of Judah. Caleb is of the tribe of Judah. And Joshua is of Ephraim. And so his land apportionment is going to be in Ephraim. And he gets Timnath Serah, which is in the mountain of Ephraim. Um, and he built this city and dwelt therein. And so Joshua doesn't actually take like his land is kind of this mountainside land or whatever, and there's I guess a village there or whatever. But he takes and they build a full size city for his family on the side of this mountain, and he goes very last. He makes sure everybody else is taken care of first. What a servant to the children of Israel. And then verse 51 wraps it up. These are the inheritance which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel divided for an inheritance by lot in Shiloh before Jehovah at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So they made an end of dividing the country. And so we've gotten through it. We've gotten through this whole apportionment thing. We've gotten through the quote-unquote boring part of it. And it's interesting. Again, geography is not my strongest suit, but to see where all these borders are and to see how they're going to play out historically over the next 1400 years until we get to the time of Jesus, I think is very, very important in understanding how the identity of the Israelite people was anchored on this is very, very important as well. So thank you for sticking with me through the whole video. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your questions and your comments. Please continue to leave those. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, all those things. And we look forward to seeing you in Joshua chapter 20. We're almost done. Joshua only has a few more chapters to go, and then we'll be in the book of Judges where the Israelites start messing it all up again. So anyway, my name is Ernie Lawrence Jr., and this has been another Swordmaster Publications presentation, and we will see you next time.